Hello. On this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club, we are going to look at why every business should have a carbon reduction plan. So I'm joined by Adam Bastock from Small 99, and he helps businesses understand their impact on our planet and people within it, which is very important at the moment, and how they can reduce their carbon emissions through, a lot of work that he does. But one of the things we'll be looking at is his carbon reduction planning tool. And he's a very nice chap. I've met him in person. I can say that for sure. Adam, I also want to touch on your People Planet Pint events. I think you're going to start off by talking about that. And they were introduced to me by Claire Walmsley Moss, who actually does attend the Cirencest at one. And yeah, so she introduced them to me, and she actually, I interviewed her back in episode 101. We've got a rerun of a show that she was part of. But I came to this People Planet Pint one because Pint was involved, so I was really interested in that. And the concept of just talking to and meeting people, meeting other businesses and talking about how we can be better custodians of the planet and just do better things. I really like that concept. So if you're going to start there, I think you've got a little presentation. Maybe talk us through that, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, brilliant. Just to give a bit of flavour to that before we kind of dive into the stats of it, as it were. It really came from this idea of we've got so much education going on in the climate space where everyone is talking about sustainability and going, oh, you need to go to attend a webinar or a workshop or whatever it might be to learn about climate and how it's going to impact on your business in a way that I don't think we really see it with many other industries, in the same way that, I used to do digital marketing and SEO. For someone buying that service, they wouldn't normally need to then go to a training thing before they bought a service in it. So it's quite a complex topic. It's very big. It's quite difficult and different. And we'll look at, after this, I want to go through some of the impacts on your business that climate change is going to have and why it is important to be aware of it. But really where People Planet Pint came from was, let's just have a conversation. Let's stop trying to have these kind of complicated workshops and these big training things and just go, let's just sit down, have a pint like we did in Stroud on a sunny afternoon and just talk about sustainability and what we're seeing in the market, what's concerning us or whatever it might be. So this really started out of, and I think I have got a slide for that now, I'll come on to that in a minute. It really started out of COP26. So we started from that position of, I was based in Glasgow at the time. I'd spent all day going around trying to find people to chat to go, what's going on? What are your feelings? What are you thinking about? But couldn't really find anything. So I thought, let's start it and just, see who turns up. We had about 40 people turn up to that. And there was a real kind of nice vibe around it. Fast forward a bit, kind of a year or so, and then it's really grown into this sort of bigger movement. So just to give some stats on that, we're now operating in about 76 different cities across the UK and Europe. We've hosted around 350 meetups, if not more, 7,500 attendees or so. We've got 107 hosts. So the way it works is it's quite decentralized in that anyone locally can become a host. They just need to apply to us. We do a bit of a kind of call with them, talk them through the process. Then we send out like a little welcome box for them to get up and set up with, and off they go. That's why it's sort of taken off, I think, so well, is that we've made it very easy. And so June 2023, we did 30 events. We did the same in July. August was a bit quieter because of holidays and stuff, but we're now gearing up to what's going to be an incredibly busy autumn this year, it turns out. So September and October look to be very busy. Just in terms of that growth, I wanted to kind of give a bit of context to it in that when we started May 2022, there was about 2 cities, and that's grown up to that 76 or so in the past 18 months. So really kind of ramped up, which has been great to see the interest in it more than anything else. Bearing in mind, we don't make money from like every event we run. This isn't me doing a big kind of successful sales pitch. This is purely for me to go, look, there's interest out there. People are taking action on climate. Isn't it exciting place to be in? So we do tend to add about 2 locations per week. Some weeks are busier than others. We're in everything from small village halls all the way through to, bigger cities where, like Manchester is one of our biggest events, where it's a great sort of thriving hub of it. These are some of our biggest cities, as I say. So like London, Manchester, Bristol, Edinburgh, Brighton are sort of our big ones, but we've got dots all over the country, which is very exciting.
And what attracts people to create new events? Because obviously you've made a toolkit, you've made it as easy as possible. What's the benefit in other people running them? Because it's great that it's spreading and it's really good. But why do you think that is?
I don't particularly know. I think because it is so easy, It's really simple for people to get started, so it's quite risk-free. And I think the main benefit is that they will get a bit of promotion as someone who's in that area. So if you are looking to try and establish yourself as a sustainability expert in an area, this is a great way to do it, in that we will bring people to you who need or are interested in sustainability. It's not a hard sell at all. We don't sell anything at the events. It's just that conversation starter. But by the way that humans work, it's the whole know, like, and trust, right? If people know about you, then they like you. Well, potentially doing a People Planet Point is going to do those first two. And then after a couple of events, they're going to trust you as well. And therefore, that sales cycle is probably converted. That's me putting my marketing hat on. The more emotional sort of sustainability side, and I don't think people are doing it objectively for that reason. I think most people are doing it because they want to bring together sustainability people in their space. And that's what's been really interesting, is we're starting to kind of go beyond the UK now. So we had our first event in Poland this week, which is a really interesting one, right? Of most of the events, that everything we're doing is an English speaking sort of promotion, but we're still starting to hit those other areas. And Switzerland especially is a really strong point for us. And so I think there is that demand internationally of just that shared space to come together and talk about climate, but also just to share the frustrations and actually gain a bit of hope. And this isn't why people necessarily sign up to host them, but it's the biggest thing we've taken out of it is the hope that people are really just relieved when they get into a room full of other people and see that they're not alone, and that they can see stuff's going on locally, and that's kind of the hope it gives.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that joining together, and it's lovely to see that it is spreading so fast. It's moving to other countries. It shows there is that need there for people to connect over this common problem that we've all got. And often we look to other people to deal with it. Why aren't governments dealing with it? Why aren't the big businesses dealing with it? And yes, they should, but it usually comes about that actually with people putting demands upon governments and big businesses, eventually they will change. But it only happens when we all know that there is a problem. We're all moving in the right direction, which we haven't been, because for various reasons. So it's great. It's great to see this movement really growing quite fast.
It's been interesting as well, because we do get quite a lot of councils attend these events, and it's a really useful resource for them to find what's going on locally. And I say resource in kind of quite a transactional way there, but they're not approaching it with that in mind. I don't think they're just going along to see what's happening, and then they're learning about all the good businesses that are going on, and then collaborations come out the back of that. So yeah, really interesting stuff. I just wanted to touch on where we kind of met, actually, is on that People Planet Point Plus event. And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts were of the day, but this really came from that idea of, we've got all these events happening, but how do we turn that into action? How do we kind of translate that across that divide into going from just talk into action? And I think that for me, it was a really successful day of bringing so many people together into one big room and going, look what's going on locally. Look what you can do. What were your sort of takeaways from the Stroud Day?
I was looking forward to it. So the moment I got the email, I was all on board. Yeah, absolutely. I thought this was great, because I do attend the People Planet Pint in Cirencester, run by Danny.
Yeah.
And that's good. And it's great to meet up and talk, but I want to take a bit more action. And I felt this was a really good way to do that. So great idea to bring everyone together. Love the venue as well, Stroud Brewery. It's a really nice place.
It's amazing, just like with the river and the sunlight, and it was just
it's a great location, and it's a good business, because they sort of instill a lot of what you're trying to do anyway, because they're trying to do the same thing. And I can't remember the owner's name, but he sort of talked through his history and where he wants to go, and all of their beers organic. So they're trying to do the same thing anyway, and they've got the same ethos. So that's really good.
I mean, they're really far on their journey. They've done so much. They're a really good example business of how far you can take it, where they're collecting rainwater from the roof, and they're doing so many different things that it's a great demonstrator that you can run a successful business that is good for the planet and is kind of is doing positive things. And there's this kind of narrative that net zero is expensive or costly and is impossible, and then you go to somewhere like Stroud and it's like, well, looks like things are going kind of all right with that anyway. So yeah, really positive.
I mean, they've got a great event space, which you can see pictured in the slide. And and you go to their website, look at their events page, and they use that space really well. There's loads of people using it, which is great to get that local community involved.
It's
so
fantastic.
At least on the face of it, doing well. He seemed to be relatively happy, although COVID was quite hard for them. So that was really good. You brought a couple of speakers in. I missed a few because we had a networking that we did, which was quite nice, where we just a group of us went and just chatted and walked, which I love walking anyway, so that's perfect. But I did come back for Mark Stevenson, who I didn't know who he was, although I have now, once I'd seen him, I sort of recognized the face. He was great. He had quite a long talk, but it was not boring. I was not dragging in any way. Passionate, funny, engaging, very direct about what we should do. I thought it was brilliant. What he says, that you got some good people in to talk, and I think that's what helps, because it's nice to have good examples of things we can do. And I think one thing stands out for me, which is to look at the people we bank with, or the people we have our pensions with, because we're putting our money with those people, and they are then in turn investing that in companies. And we want those companies to be doing good for the planet. So, one big thing is we can actually look at our bank provider. We're with HSBC, not a particularly good one, as it turns out. As I found out during the day, we went through, and it actually turns out they're not very good. So it's not an easy thing to move, but it's something I will be looking to do, actually moving to a more responsible provider. You just don't think of that. So actually having these talks where you've got tangible things you can do on the day, brilliant, really well, and great food as well, which
the food was incredible,
good for me.
Massive help. And I think it was all vegan as well, and there's never any kind of concerns or complaints, and it was just so well done, and really demonstrates, I think, that it can be that sort of event or venue kind of space can be done so exceptionally well, and it's not sacrifice. It's that whole idea that is the language that's often used is quite incorrect, I think, and I think the only way to kind of break through that is to demonstrate it and do it better. There's a great quote from someone, I can't remember who it's by, but is, if you want to change the world, throw a better party. And that's really the driving force behind People Planet Point, is going on, actually, let's just get everyone into the room together and throw a great party that is going to lead to some positive actions.
Well, how did it go for you?
I think it was tiring, but in a very good way. There's a lot of people there, which was obviously a good thing, but I just turned up at like 12 to start setting up, going, is anyone going to turn up? And then at 12:30, there's like 40 people there, and it doesn't start till 1. And it's like, okay, well, that suggests there's demand here. And it was great. It was really positive. Everyone had a very good time. And I think the main thing is that, you've taken action away from it, right? You're talking about changing your emissions from your finances. I've not mentioned that. We've not mentioned that before this call at all. So that's clearly made an impact on you and planted the seed there to take action. And that was really the whole point behind this, right? Of going, how do we get people to understand a little bit more about what they're doing, what they're up to, in a very fun environment that isn't a sit down in a corner and, be told off by someone with a stick type approach. Not that many courses do that, I don't think, but just broadly, the climate change can be incredibly dry and dour, and therefore it can feel a little bit like that, no matter how good the facilitator or the kind of training program is.
Yeah, I think going back to something you said earlier about positive climate action might be expensive or hard. It might be if you were to do it very quickly, but this is something that should be done in a reasonable timescale, but done over a series of steps. Like any massive project, you just break it down into a series of steps and take them one at a time, and don't see it as a big thing. It's just you are moving along towards the bigger goal. And I think that's where this really helps, because you could talk to different people about the different things they've been doing in their business and the struggles they'd overcome. And I think that was really enlifting and very infused me. And I hopefully that did it to a lot of other people as well. They came away with a bit more energy, even if it was just to complete a few additional actions. I think that moves everyone forward, and then they can obviously take that back to their local People Planet Pints as well.
Exactly. And I think it is just that starting conversations and showing that it can be done. So there's quite a few people in there who kind of shouted out towards the end of like the workshop we did of like different actions they'd taken. And it was people who were like, oh, we've got like unlimited travel days or whatever it is. And people took that away. And it was interesting as well that I did an event on one of the kind of the workshops we did, talking about smart plugs, which are really simple devices that, you know, just for me are just bread and butter. They go into the wall, they automate timings so that it means that these lights behind me come on at sunrise or sunset. Sunrise, they come on at sunset every day without me having to think about it, and it changes throughout the year. People were like, what are smart plugs? And it was just such a nice sort of, it's a really simple thing that you can go away and for a tenner you can get some and start reducing your scope 2 emissions down, you know, quite quickly if you want to look at it in those terms, which we'll probably look at in a bit. But yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's great. And they've got, the main thing is they had a really nice low alcohol beer. They had like a 2% table beer, which was just absolutely perfect for if I'm just talking and hosting. I didn't want more water because I've been drinking so much of it, but didn't want like hot drinks either because it was like 25 degrees that day or something. You know, it's quite warm.
It was warm, yeah.
And it was ramping around. So yeah, big fan of Strand.
What was that beer that they had? Because I didn't have that one. I had a 0 alcohol one, which I stayed on all day. Which was great.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called. It was one of the ones that was on the taps. They didn't have it in cans or anything, which was very frustrating. But yeah, it's a really good low alcohol one. I'll see
if I can. Let me know, and we'll put it in the notes later. I'll put mine in, but the one I had it wasn't one they produced, but they were selling it in there because it was organic as well. And how weird to go to an event, drink alcohol, what looks like alcohol, a beer, and be absolutely fine to drive home. It was great. I loved it.
Best of both worlds. Well, this is the thing, is like, even when I'm 2%, because I arrived at like, you know, had the first pint at about 3, but never felt unhinged or kind of delirious or anything like that, because it was just such a low alcohol beer. I didn't see the people for 0 ones, but yeah. Just a quick thing, kind of another format that might be worth mentioning here is kind of the evolution to this as well that we're doing, is the People Planet Pastry, which is that slightly more hands-on workshop element that we do in the mornings, just because it is, I think it's really key to try and get people to start thinking about this in a more fun way, and hopefully the pastry events will do that. So yeah, we're launching that now. We're going to see how it goes, so it'll be really good to check in with you in a few months and update you on how the pastry events are. If anyone would like to become a host who's in the audience, and please do let me know. We are looking for hosts. We've got about 10 cities so far, I think. So yeah, that's been great.
Is this one, we were talking briefly before we started recording, is this one where people are able to go through their action plan to some degree? So yes, it's more practical rather than just chat. Yeah, okay.
So this is going to be a precursor. We're going to have 2 events. So it's all sort of merged and come together. We've got one that's going to be, the pastry is going to be a free event where you've got like an idea sheet where you'll have a conversation and kind of get some initial ideas out and start very loosely building the action plan. The idea is, if then you want the slightly more full fat version where it is, you get the answers basically, that will be a paid workshop that's slightly longer and slightly more intense. Intense is the wrong word, but you know, slightly more energized and it's full, what's the word? Tail to end or whatever it's called.
So there's some marketing BS term I'm sure we could slip in there that encompasses that.
Full fun. Yeah, we're recording this on a Friday afternoon, so my brain's not quite up to full firing standard, but we'll get there. So I've got some slides now that I was going to walk through of kind of where this has come from and really why we started People Planet Pint. Was there anything else you wanted me to chat over before I dive in?
No. Just one thing I do want to mention related to your full day event. It was to do with meeting Mark Stevenson. He teams up with, well, you were doing a link with him to do with the podcast, but also he has a podcast with John Richardson, who I see on, what's the comedy show? 8 out of 10 Cats, that's it. And so he's on that with someone else, and they basically talk in a humory way, a funny way, about things that people can do. Because Mark is actually, he's a consultant. He goes out and does sort of works with big companies and gets paid lots of money to actually get incite change in them and talk to them about things that they know they should be doing. So I just wanted to mention that podcast, which is John Richardson and the Futurenauts, which is I've listened to a few episodes, quite funny. So I will continue with that.
It's a really good balance of like, they do quite a lot of serious information giving, but in a very light-hearted format, which I think is really difficult to do given the current circumstance. So yeah, it's a really good gateway, I think, for anyone who maybe wants to learn a bit more about sustainability but doesn't want to go through the slightly more serious, dour podcasts that are out there. Because I, even myself, like, you know, I'm consuming this all the time. I have started switching off from a lot of podcasts that are too, not even, there's nothing anything personally wrong with them. They're very good podcasts, but it's just I don't need more information like that in my life. Whereas the Future
Yeah.
Naught one I do listen to because it's funny and gives me information. So it's that sort of the balancing act there.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
carry on. Why?
cool.
Why is this important?
So where this has come from, really? So if you're a small business or if you're a medium-sized business, this I'm just going to run through what climate change is going to do to your business in the next few years, and then we'll look at what you can do about it and move on to the more practical side. But really, this is always a really great map, I think, to go with, where it shows that the impacts of climate change in the UK are not equal. Quite often we hear a lot about it's going to get warmer, which it is, but how is that going to actually manifest? Southeast, if you're based down in the southeast, it's going to get a lot drier and warmer. So I used to live in Brighton, and already they're starting to see kind of water rationing and some quite dire issues around the water table there, just because of the kind of demand on it. I currently live in Glasgow, where there's going to be kind of the opposite problem. Having said that, it is currently 25 degrees and there's not a cloud in the sky, so it's not always going to be like this necessarily, but it's more likely that winter's going to get a lot wetter and summer's going to get a lot drier in Glasgow, which is then going to have its own impact. So it's important to think of these things in different elements, and that you are going to get broadly more extreme weather everywhere. Those impacts are not going to be equal. And the core thing is it is going to be destabilizing to a business, and therefore it is something to be aware of, where these elements and the future is going to be one where the things that you thought were reliable may not be so, and that might be more flooding in your local area. It might be things like supply chain disruption. So we'll look at that shortly. There's a really good graph here that was in the Financial Times recently, where they'd mapped out kind of this rainfall over the past 2-3 months, where we'd had an incredibly wet sort of end of July, August, and we'd had an incredibly dry and quite sunny sort of early June and end of May, especially up here. And this had really caused a lot of disruption in that kind of flow for farmers. And there's this phrase of "we are in the lap of the gods," as UK farmers contend with that extreme weather. And I think this is the important thing, that these were UK farmers growing wheat. I can't remember exactly where in the country they were, but it highlighted that it is a local thing. This isn't just a global impact that's going to be happening somewhere else. And there's a really interesting quote in it which highlighted the kind of the double-edged sword we're entering into, where the farmers were then using heaters to dry the bread grain because they run on diesel or gas, and that was causing a lot of money to be burned, quite literally, because that was then incurring a cost of £15 per tonne to remove that moisture. So because it was wetter, the grain was wetter, and they had to dry them out using the heaters, which run on oil and gas, which then caused an extra 10% of costs, driving inflation, but then also contributing to the problem in the fact that it's the oil and gas that's being burned that is causing the kind of wheat to be wetter. So there's a very clear link there, and there's quite a nice little summary, in a horrible way, of the impacts that we're seeing. And so this is why I wanted to talk about climate risk. And feel free to stop me at any point, Ben, because I will go off on one of these things. Climate risk really is about that sort of operational risk. And this is where, as an organization, you need to be looking at what you're doing and start building in that resilience and go, well, actually, this isn't just about sort of climate change. This is about your day-to-day impacts being threatened. We saw this back in, I think it was late June, where we did have a lot of rainfall in quite a short period of time in Scotland, where the road and rails started collapsing. As we record this, there's a lot of similar issues in Hong Kong and China, where there's been record rainfall, which hasn't been seen for over 200 years or something, and that's caused a lot of disruption to transport. So if your business relies on goods being moved around, this is going to cause issues and it's going to have impacts. What I would think here as well is think of the 2 steps away from your supply chain. So who do you supply and who do they supply? If they're also going to be impacted by this might have impact on your business.
That's right. It's not about direct impact on your business. It's about those steps away from it and the ripple effect that it will affect you eventually.
Exactly. We'll look at an example later as well with supply chains. And I heard from someone today, they're 7 steps removed from legislation, but they were still being required, they were still being impacted by it. So that ripple effect can reach even the more remote companies. Again, we saw last year that China got hit by the opposite problem of too much water, of too little water. And that drought really led to a lot of the power stations having to shut down. So it was hydro powered. 80% of the area was using hydro, which then meant that factories can operate. And also because the rivers are so low, the shipping containers or the ships couldn't get in to actually remove goods that had already been made. So you suddenly have stranded assets that are then in factories that can't be shipped out by cargo ships. and the factories can't produce any more of it because there's no power either. So these are the impacts of that more extreme weather. And then even this year, we saw again the Panama Canal was experiencing lower water levels due to drought, which again was having impacts on supply chains. So again, if you're shipping things around the world, this is stuff to be aware of, where you might want to adjust your purchasing patterns to mitigate for this and move away from a just-in-time to a just-in-case model, for example. That might have its own impacts on cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where it's manifesting. This isn't all just climate related. This isn't just weather. It is going to have material impacts on how you run your business. And so there's questions there of like, can your people get to work? Can you get into disruption? Are people who can get into work going to be too hot, too cold, etc.? That's the bad news. So we'll pause there and then start turning around, and we're going on the upslope now as to kind of come out of this valley of doom. In the benefits are that climate action really does mean climate resilience. So a really obvious example is that the past 2 years, we've seen massive spikes in energy costs. Well, the good news is that installing solar panels is going to massively reduce your energy bills. Payback periods for some commercial installations are as low as 3 years at the minute due to that. So there's kind of huge potential there to generate. And, you know, those solar panels, once they're on there, are going to be good for 25, 30 years. So they're going to be generating power and decarbonising you or decoupling you from the grid for that time as well. So you have to think about that resilience over that 10, 15-year period. If energy prices go up in 10 years' time, well, at least they're going to do that. Local supply chains and using materials locally is going to help, again, from those international supply shifts. So the answer might be, okay, we need to buy more stock in and have it sat in that warehouse, or it might be we need to use less stuff and use more stuff locally that's maybe from kind of circular economy or is more recycled. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. And it's not something that I know anything about, but the construction industry is massive for this, right? In that the amount of materials that are being used and being shipped around is quite considerable. And there may be better options of doing that are slightly more circular and reusing that waste. Another example is planting trees, which I'm not talking about this in a carbon offset perspective. I'm just saying that trees are going to be beneficial at providing shelter and really pinning in the kind of the ground, so that those floods and that increased rainfall isn't going to be as disruptive. And also,
just on the trees, before you go onto the next one, something I like to do with a friend from time to time is wild camping.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to think back earlier on in July, we went wild camping locally in Nailsworth area, and it was really hot, super hot. But where we were camping was a heavily wooded area, quite an established woodland. And when you went into it, it was incredibly cool.
Yeah.
Because not only because you've got the shade, but also underfoot, it had moisture in the soil. Whereas you look everywhere else and you look in fields or pathways, or maybe just even open wildland, and it's dry, it's cracking. But with the forest, with the woodland over it, and it wasn't even that big, it was on a hill, but it was still incredibly moist and cool and damp. And it just goes to show that just having woodland coverage, especially it has to be established to some degree, can retain that moisture and cool the environment quite considerably. Firsthand, you can see that, and that's why a lot of people are trying to do that, not just for carbon offsetting, but actually it can help mitigate a lot of the problems we're going to get with more rainfall and more sun.
I think there's a great example as well where you start looking at urban areas, and there's this thing called urban heat island effect, where you look at a picture of a high street, you've got a wall on the right, you've got tarmac, and then you've got another wall. Those three things that are like that are reflecting heat into the middle, which is where the people are. And if you've got cars, especially, that's also generating heat, and and less so probably with electric vehicles, but even with like kind of petrol vehicles, they're still generating heat as well. So if you think of a day where it does get to 30 degrees, suddenly you've got this zone that is just getting superheated and will be 5 to 10 degrees potentially hot, like warmer than, as you say, an urban area, a wooded area outside of the urban centre. And that's where like seeing tree design, and some cities are better than this and others in putting trees into high streets and actually going, well, look, especially if you're in the southeast, you're going to want the high street to have some coverage on there. Those trees are going to one, absorb more water during heavy rainfall during the summer, during the winter, and two, provide shelter from the heat and cooling effect during the summer as well. So just as you're walking around, be mindful of this as well, of going, actually, how are the urban areas being designed and what are your choices? What choices are you making for that? If you're putting your driveway and tarmacking it, or like paving it, what impact is that going to have during heavy rain, or what impact is it going to have when it's really hot? Are you going to have heat reflected back at the house? And is it going to heat your house up and make it really uncomfortable compared to if you had like bushes or trees out the front? So it's small things like that. And I think just walking around, you start seeing it everywhere. And that's without even going down towards like things like AstroTurf, which obviously are going to have even more negative effects.
Yeah,
which
don't get me started on that.
No, exactly. But it's a good example.
Yeah.
I think electric cargo bikes are really interesting as well. We've seen Amazon just announce that they're putting a few hundred of these into Glasgow, where they're doing it partly because of the emission zone that's coming in the city centre, but partly just because it means that the deliveries are faster. It's cheaper for them to operate. They can get more people to ride them because you don't need a driving license. You can get anyone to start cycling around. And it just adds up all these benefits. And it means there's less diesel vans on the road, which means there's less traffic, which means people who do need to drive places aren't getting stuck behind these massive Amazon vans. Cargo bikes can use the cycle lanes and some, or even the side roads much more easily than a van can. So there's co-benefits to all of these actions as well. One example is of the solar panels was a hospital in South Wales, not too far from Stroud, I don't think, actually. Obviously across the border. They were due to save about £300,000 a year, but they ended up saving just over £1 million, partly because the price increases, partly because the solar panels started generating far more electricity than expected. The road up near me in Scotland, the rest would be thankful. They're currently rebuilding it due to several landslides, but they're putting trees all up the side of it, which you can see there's like tiny little pegs to, again, just bed in the root systems and tie it together. And then, City of Westminster estimated a £660 million a year saving by turning away from vans and moving more towards the electric cargo bikes. So again, there are going to be benefits here financially for organisations.
Yeah, and benefits for their staff from an exercise point of view. It's nice to be out and about. So it's a big change for some people, but I think it's a very positive one.
I think so. And I think, if you are able-bodied, what would you rather be doing? Sat in traffic, swearing at people from behind a smelly diesel van, or cycling around and having a slightly more enjoyable time, at least, and getting the dopamine going. So
yeah,
this really kind of very brings me onto this idea of what sustainability is, because a lot of people think it's the classic things like recycling or going plastic free or using paper straws, where I think these don't really scratch the surface of the full impact of what sustainability means, which is more, can your organization sustain itself? That means from a financial point of view, that means from a marketing perspective, it means from a sales perspective, it means from a human resource perspective. It's all of these things. This is not just a nice to have. It underpins every element of your business. And you need to start thinking about it in that way, which is, and we'll come on to the scorecard you did, but that was to try and prompt some of those thoughts around, actually, what does this look like for you at a slightly bigger level? In terms of, just very quickly wanted to touch on the legislation, and I'll come off share, but in terms of why bother, there are like some supply chain emissions that are coming down. And this is where I wanted to mention the NHS, because this was a supplier who, I think they're a manufacturing client, quite a small organization, 2 to 3 staff. They were being asked for their carbon reduction plan. And they were 7 steps removed from the actual client who was delivering directly into the NHS. So you can see that NHS has gone to their main supplier going, we did a carbon reduction plan for you. That includes your supply chain. And then they've turned around and handed the problem just down the chain. That person's did the same thing, turned around again, and it's gone all the way down. I'll go into a bit more detail on this soon because it's really interesting with them. Tesco's have required net zero by 2023. So they're doing a lot of work with their supply chain, throw the pen across the room, around kind of engaging what that looks like and what does that meaningfully mean. They're starting with bigger suppliers. It's still going to hit smaller ones. Those of you south of the border, less relevant, but in the Scottish Enterprise are a government agency up here that do a lot of support. Similar to kind of the local enterprise partnerships were done in England. But so any support package that they are giving of more than £10,000 is going to need a net zero plan to access it. That's quite loose in terms of requirements, but they're still going to need that kind of carbon reduction plan or net zero plan by next year to access any funding. It's quite a kind of a strict conditionality requirement. And we're seeing a lot more come through councils as well, where they're also using their procurement strategies to decarbonise, and that's sort of their main focus on action. And that's also coming through broader sort of funding requirements. So if you are going for any grants, it's likely there's going to be a box at some point to go, what is your sustainability policy? I'm going to skip over the Scottish Enterprise one because I think it's not too interesting, but it's mostly scope 1 and 2 minimum at the minute. And they do require a 50% commitment of reduction by 2030. So it does sort of align. The more interesting one here is NHS England, where we can see here the timeline. In 2022, they did ask that all NHS tenders have a net zero score or weighting to them. 2023, they brought that in line with the PPN 0621, the Public Procurement Notice Framework, which is any contract more than £5 million requires a carbon reduction plan. And again, that's quite technical specification. 2024, all procurement needs to have a carbon reduction plan. That is their words. That's not me summarizing it. It's quite blunt in that. And we can see just in that 2-year window how quickly that's really ratcheted and tightened down. And we can see that moving forward, there's about a 3-year gap where people are expected to get those carbon reduction plans in place, start having those public reporting targets across all 3 scopes, and then moving into some really interesting zone where they want lifetime analysis for all their products and suppliers. So if you're sending pens in, what's the carbon footprint of this pen? That's sort of what they're asking for. Right now, that's a really difficult thing to answer, but the benefit is the more people who are measuring all their footprint between now and then, that 2028 target becomes a lot easier to achieve.
Yeah, the easier it becomes. I was just going to ask, I mean, at what point, because it's great that larger organizations are asking businesses of large size, as you say, it ripples through, to start the process. It's at what point they will actually start asking for action. It looks like the NHS, of part of what you're showing here, they are starting to look for action in terms of that. And I think often just by having to go through the process of measuring things, companies will look at something and go, actually, we can do something about that. It's relatively straightforward, just by having to go through that process. And the hard work is often starting rather than anything else.
This is really why we've designed the kind of the workshop that I mentioned earlier, that sort of package in a box, because the aim of that is not to give you all the answers. The point there is to prove that you've already started. And most businesses will have done stuff already that they don't think about. And there'll be conscious decisions that have been made that they can claim as part of their carbon reduction plan if they just actually bloody told people about it. And this is the biggest frustration I have, and partly why that kind of People Planet Pint thing was there, of going, look at everyone in this room and how everyone is now discussing all the things that they've done as a organization. That might be a freelancer, that might be a construction company with 500 employees. How many of those people actually have that written down on a page somewhere on the website? And the answer is normally about 2% of people. And that's where I really see that carbon reduction plan coming in. Is it doesn't have a particularly set rigid framework that it needs to adhere to. It doesn't need to be complicated or even like accredited to an ISO standard or anything like that. Some industries will do, and that's fine. But what I'm seeing is it's normally quite broad. It's normally a commitment that you have taken action and a demonstration that you are taking action. And that can take a variety of forms. The simpler, the better. But just saying that you've done stuff and you're aware of it seems to be kind of good enough at the minute. I think that's it from, oh, there we go, the summary slide. So just very quickly to kind of wrap up, and then I'll kind of hand over to you, Ben, is that things are happening and we are seeing a lot of this move through the supply chain quite rapidly. And we're going to see more of that ratchet up and just come from different directions. So councils, larger corporates, as they take on different initiatives, are going to need that. And there's going to be more pressure coming generally. And I think that's the summary really, is that the impacts on your organization, on your business, are going to be multiple, but they're also going to be quite indirect. There's no single thing that I can point to here to say it's going to be this. It's going to just manifest in different places, in different kind of ways. The benefit being that the more you take a reduction plan and kind of take that action, the more likely it is that you're not going to be too affected by that. And the point is that by having a carbon reduction plan, you're going to have a more resilient business to the future anyway, and it's going to be more profitable because you're avoiding you're mitigating the risk from climate change as well, as we saw at the start. So it's not like this is a arduous, it's something else I've got to sort out thing. This is going to make your business more money if you take more action. So, there are benefits there. And that's it from me.
No, brilliant. What I'd like to do is, just going back to your comment about how many people actually talk about what they are doing. to reduce their impact. We try and do it on this show, and we try and, I attend People Planet Pint, but we don't talk about it on our website, really. And so one of the things I wanted to do, if you're okay with that, is if we can just start off using your carbon reduction plan tool and just start the process off. And then it's something that I can, as we go through it, I can share that with people somehow on the website, either sharing where we're up to or sharing it through blogs as a way of just spurring other people into action and saying, actually, you can go along and do it with us as a starter. Should we do that? Should we give that a go?
I think that's perfect. Yeah, it's a great shot.
We won't do it for too long, but just to start the process. So am I sharing the screen? Yeah, brilliant. So what I've got is your website up here. Actually, just before I do that, I just touch on, here's Mark Stevenson. Here's his website, markstevenson.org, which I just wanted to mention that. And then also this is the interview. It's actually not an interview, it's a presentation from Claire, who told me about you in the first place, on how to be more environmentally friendly with marketing. So I just wanted to mention those bits.
And that bus that's in the image there is one of the ones that we saw that was parked outside the pub where People Planet Pint started.
Was it?
They literally pulled up outside, yeah, because it was right next to it, and they were having trouble trying to find somewhere to park. So yeah, it's a good sort of cycle.
Yeah, that was their touring round, and it was really to get press and to enable other businesses and organisations to get press related to that. Yeah. So that, again, it's I think people like to crystallise around something, which is why your PPP events work so well. So let's go back to your website here, which is small99.co.uk. There's two things you can do. I've already run one of them, which we won't spend too much time on now, but if you click on the measure button, you can go through and measure your impact, and it asks you lots of questions, relentlessly asking you questions. It actually doesn't take too long. I think it took me a couple of minutes to go through it, just answering them. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the average response time is less than 3 minutes. So
definitely.
I've got that data to hand.
It was less than that, and it just is, I guess, a place to start, just to give you some idea on impact. But really, what I want to look at is taking things forward. So looking at the carbon reduction plan, which, if I go to Hero, which is your tool here, it's a free tool. Certainly at the moment, it's a free tool that people can use, and I just want us to start off. So I'm going to start today. Now, barring any technical issues, we'll see what happens.
I was going to say, doing things live always makes me very nervous, but it should be fine. Just while you're doing and filling that out, I just wanted to very quickly say that with the measure tool, the idea behind that is that it's giving you a rough idea of your footprint, your biggest, buckets of emissions. We are building a tool that will give you a better idea and quantify your actual footprint with the same sort of process.
Oh, okay. So I'm not a campsite. Where would I be? Yeah, marketing, digital, and PR. Great. Well, everyone should know my address, really. Password. I probably don't want to share that password. I'll probably change that later, but we'll use that for the moment. Yes, of course, I want to receive tips, and I do accept terms and conditions. Oh, something while I'm waiting for that to come through, you sent a little email when I filled out this particular form. You sent a little email here saying you planted 5 trees as a thank you. It's very nice. And you can actually go and see the forest on this ecology website.
Yes, we also do carbon offsets through that as well. So we plant 5 trees, and I think it's 0.5 ton of CO2 emissions we pull out as well as part of that. Is that
automated, the 5 trees, or is that something that you calculate yourself?
It's automated, but we are looking at changing it soon, actually. So we are thinking of diversifying our sort of offsetting activity a little bit. And we might be looking at something more local trees, partly because our footprint is not our footprint is not massive, and therefore we don't need to do a huge amount of offsets. And there's a sort of question there of like, well, actually, can we have more positive impact through kind of local schemes?
Okay, so that's verified. Brilliant. I'll continue, and I should just be able to log in. Okay, so where do I start? What's the first thing to do?
So the way we designed this is there are 4, if we weren't doing a recording, there are 4 welcome actions. They've all got videos attached to them. So if you click into one of them, it should have like a link somewhere within the thing to watch a welcome video. There you go. That will walk you through it. You've got me on the call to do that because I can talk to you live. The idea behind this is really just to get things out of the way. So you can click on add action at the bottom left, and that's your first action that is going to be the easiest, cheapest, and fastest thing for you to do. And what you can do here is we've given you some local kind of individual actions that you can take. So depending on your kind of situation, you can just go through and start looking at those. You can add your own step. So if you did want to put like a note for yourself to say, actually,
Right,
there's a local supplier. Yep.
That's nice. Yeah. So we are already using Octopus and have been for a couple of years. So what I do now, so I need to actually just put it in here as a little update for the action.
Yeah, I would say already using Octopus. Click add update. And then if you go mark action as done. There you go. Brilliant. So let's just click on add action and take another one. And just do this for a couple of times. So this one's slightly different, where it's a account-based measurement. This probably is a bit more technical, but it's something if you wanted to do your footprint more kind of accurately, you can do that. I'd probably move on to a different action just for speed.
Yeah, but you could then follow this action through here, and then it's going to give you data. Let's add another one in.
Yes, that's one of our kind of recommended tools.
Export supply chain data.
Yeah, so this is a really, and again, these actions you can move out of the way. So if this is something that is going to cause you pain, you can mark the action as do later. The reason why we have this is that your supply chain is going to be such a big part of your emissions that you're going to want to start engaging that. And really interestingly, one of our clients, one of the people who uses Hero, Lewis from Yardbee Studios, did a great LinkedIn post about this, where they had gone through and they'd looked at the top kind of 10 people they spend the most money with. They'd started emailing out, just going like, hey, we're looking at a footprint. Can you share your net zero commitments? What are you up to? And they had such a poor response rate to that they were quite shocked that they were so much further ahead than they realized, because so many of their suppliers just didn't respond or didn't come back to them. So I think that is really a way to kind of get the ideas flowing.
So really, this task is all about reaching out to people who supply you, whatever that may be, whether it's resources or hosting. In our case, is the majority of what we do. But we use a lot of software and plugins and so on. Reaching out to them and asking what their policies are
exactly.
to move that forward. Okay. Let's add. That's going to take me a little while, so I'll leave that as doing. Let's add another action in here. Check your EPC rating. So that's something we have done. I mean, I work from home, so would that be the obviously, we've got a few people who work in different locations. We all homework. How would you manage that? So if you've got a business, obviously it's the EPC for the business. Would you do it for the head office for us, for example, if we're remote?
I would do it. I think this is where it gets complicated of really kind of what your aims and achievements are here with this. You can start doing it with individual homes if you wanted to kind of start assessing that and get an idea of your kind of footprint. They're quite a quick way of doing that. Really, this is designed partly because what we found is that a lot of small business owners who are maybe working from a co-working space can't actually access their energy data. And therefore, this is a much quicker way to get an idea of your carbon footprint without needing to engage with your landlord. Yeah. So if you click on like that top one, it links you through to the UK website for finding energy certificates, where you can just enter in the building you're in. On that certificate, there is then a kilogram estimate per year of the amount of CO2 you're producing. You can use that and then move on with your life. It's not going to be accurate, but it gives you a rough kind of ballpark figure of going, okay, well, we know that we used about 10 square meters of office space in this building, and therefore we do 10 times the amount of kilos that's on that certificate.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is important. We might not be able to measure it, or it might take too long to measure it. And it may not even be possible to measure things effectively, but it's better just to guess and move closer to being in a better place and a better solution. Because over time, things, as you said, as more people doing this, more data will become available and become easier to be able to do this over time. And it's about making those steps rather than saying, well, we have to be either perfect or not. It doesn't. It's like you're basically moving towards perfection through being imperfect.
Well, because this will give you a rough figure, and then if you look at it and go, well, that looks wrong, you're in a really strong position because you know what right must look like, and therefore you can go, well, actually, let's start looking at that in a bit more detail. So, yeah, all these actions as you kind of mark them. I mean, feel free to add some more in if you'd like to kind of keep going. I can't remember how many.
Let's add one more. Swap. Okay, so I can do this one. Swap to LEDs. And this one I actually have done, but I'd have to go and find out what the EPC is. So we swapped to LEDs. We have already done that. So would I tick these, or is it just more important? I guess this is for us, isn't it? It's up to us how we want to use this. Yes, I can tick the boxes and say, yeah, I've replaced all of the light bulbs to move towards that. But actually, ultimately, it's the fact that it's helping me move towards getting this done. And it is all done. So everything's done. All lights, LEDs. So that would be my objective there.
Yeah.
Everything's done. Actually, there's one here. Calculate cost saving from LEDs. Well, I've kind of already gone past that. I guess I wouldn't need to do it.
Yeah, it's more that if you are in a big office space like LEDs. So on that survey that you took earlier with the measure tool, the main reason for that is then we can start seeing the barriers to action. And it's still, even through that tool, around 60% of people haven't swapped all of their lights to LEDs. So it's still a really low hanging fruit that can be quite easy. And like again, the cost savings typically pay back in about 6 months.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we noticed the difference pretty much immediately when we were moving everything over.
Yeah.
So that's great. So we'd continue like that. It's going to be it's going to be a bit easier for us as a smaller company. There's, I'm in charge of everything. So if I want to make a change, I can do that. It's all on me. Obviously, this could be really useful for people in larger businesses to help encourage and motivate maybe their bosses or managers to move forward with some of these by having some evidence and tangible steps.
Exactly. And I think so the key thing here really is as you make progress in that reduction plan, if you go over on the left-hand side to the Your Progress button, we will automatically build out this page for you. So as you complete more actions and as you mark more actions as do later, it builds this report, which then if someone turns around to you and asks, do you have a carbon reduction plan? You can just copy and paste this link that's at the top right and then send it to them. And then that will update automatically as you take action. And there are areas in the settings page where you can start to add in your carbon footprint as you get a better idea of that and your net zero targets. And it becomes that sort of storytelling element for you to move forward with.
Yeah, so this is great. So I did have a question about this. Obviously, I can share this with people who need to know. Would you also encourage people to put a link to this on their website in the footer? Looks like they've got terms, conditions, and environmental policy. This could go on there too.
Exactly, that's it. That's the main idea behind it. Really, is that because this page is live and it will update, immediately. You can just share it as a live sort of repository of everything you're doing. What we probably do say that you should. Because at the minute, things like if you've got solar panels and you want to put a photo of those on, that's best explained in a blog post because it can be a little bit more informative or a video or something like that. But then you can link to that blog post from this page. So there's in the settings again, there's like links you can do through to that. So I think it depends on what your kind of end goal of this is, like a communication tool room.
Yeah, so communication tool I think it's also quite good as a way of giving you some things to do. So we're not just going, hair on fire, we can't do anything about this. This is just saying, well, we can. Here are lots of steps you can do, but also about rewarding progress. We've got things, you can actually have a look back at this. I know I've only completed 2 steps at the moment, but I'll be able to look back at this as I go through it and say, actually, we have moved forward and encourage other people to do the same. So I think it's certainly the beginning is a great tool for us. I will feed back in a couple of months. Hopefully I've made some progress on this.
Exactly. That's brilliant.
Anything else you want to share about this?
The only one thing I was going to say is if you click on the LEDs one, for example, this actually then you can see as you make that progress, that timeline can be built up. So it might be that if you're having difficulty with like engaging a supplier or like a landlord, you can mention that in here to say, look, we are taking action on it. We are doing it. It's not that we're not doing it. It's just that we're, providing some updates along that pathway. Because there are many reasons that you are probably you've not completed something. That doesn't mean that you're not trying. So I think like electric vehicles are a really obvious one where if you're in the middle of a contract for your petrol car or, you're delivering pianos from Aberdeen to Inverness, a petrol van is probably, an electric van is probably not going to be the right tool for that job. And therefore it's about showing that in that kind of box and showing that timeline rather than just not mentioning it at all.
That's brilliant. Well, as I said, I'll feed back and let you know how I get on. And equally, you said you started up your new sort of workshops to deliver these carbon reduction plans in a sort of very physical form where you actually take people through things. So it'd be good to know how that's going on for you as well. Is there anything else you want to share? I mean, maybe where can people find you and what action would you like them to take if they want to move things forward?
I would say that, so the number one thing I would probably say is do try and find a local People Planet pint. So if you just go to small99.co.uk, we've got links on in the header there to kind of go and find that. The main thing for me really as well is then using Hero and getting feedback on that. It's not necessarily a perfect tool, but it should give you a lot of ideas to get started with. The more people using it, the more we can start to see actually what are people being blocked by, and where do we need to give more information and unblock things for you and really support you on that journey. So we've made Hero free, so please do go in there and kind of get using it and feedback to us on that. So
great. And I must ask, if people did want some help to sort of move them forward, are you available for consultancy? Can they get in touch with you for that?
Get in touch with us. What we're going to start doing is probably hosting some sort of accountability sessions so that we can kind of bring in specialist consultants who can help unblock that as a bit more of a group. Or we do have, like, if you do require SBTI requirements or you've got more specific gnarly issues, we do have a team of consultants that we refer work to, who aren't sort of inside Small99, but we preferred partners to link out to, who are excellent people. So we can kind of definitely help there. So do just, if you need help, shout, and we'll find a solution for you, whether that's us or someone else.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate your time. This has been a really good episode. I'm going to make sure a lot of people see it, because I think there's lots of insight here and steps that people can do to move forward, that even if you don't care about climate change, I think going through this process is going to improve your business and you are going to see benefits from it. But of course you should. But if you don't, you will see benefits from this. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everyone, for watching this episode of the Inventive Marketing Club. If you want to learn more, you can find all of our great episodes, or you can join us at ratherinventive.com/club. Thank you, and bye-bye.